21 Savage had a week as the main character on social media. We know that he's been the mayor of Clubhouse. He's still on Clubhouse. I think everyone left Clubhouse after 2020. 21 is still on there every day talking to people. If he's not on there, he's on Twitter Spaces. But naturally, coming off of a Drake collab project where you have 11 of the 15 songs you're on with Drake, he's very confident in himself. And he said that he can beat his entire 2016 XXL freshman class in a versus battle. Naturally, some nasty conversations started over social media. A lot of people doubting 21 Savage. Like the thing is, absolutely he's saying this because of he just did a 16 song project with Drake. Like, who wouldn't say that after you do a 16 song project with Drake? Versus is 2020. Yeah. You got 16 songs, right? Well, 11, but you have half of your songs you can play from that project. So his confidence makes perfect sense. But Kodak Black fired back at him and said that he was tripping out, blah, blah, blah. Kodak's been going at him like the last week, like just with a bunch of different shit. And then people brought up Lil Uzi Vert. I know you've spoken on this already, so you don't have to rehash your thoughts.
No, let's do it, man. That's why I'm here.
But for me, I think his only competition in his class is Lil Uzi Vert. I think Kodak has a lot of hits. He's been on some big features. He's done big records, but I don't think people remember the extent of 21 Savage's catalog. Like, I actually made a list of his songs, and I've got a good amount of them before you even get to Drake's name. So let me read these off, because I might be reminding you of some.
Okay.
So you got X with Future. You got No Heart. You got Rockstar Post Malone. You got Bank Account. You got Bartier Cardi with Cardi B. You got A Lot with J. Cole. You got My Life with J. Cole. Outside, Travis Scott. NC-17, Travis Scott. 10 Freaky Girls, or Metro Boomin, and Don't Come Out the House, Metro Boomin. I'm pretty sure I'm missing something, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 songs before you even get to a Drake collab. Most of these are hits, or they were big records. So I think people are not realizing how much 21 has done over the course of his career since debuting in 2016. Like, he's been hot his whole career. Like, there's never really been a down moment or a project that people were like, oh, this is kind of mid. Like, 21's been doing his thing for his whole career. Now, Uzi, of course, Uzi's a tough matchup for him. Like, very tough matchup.
Tough.
Like,
very tough.
His 2016 stuff, his 2017 stuff, like, over the course of Uzi's career, he's been hot too. Like, he's never really had a down moment. He's just maybe not as present as 21 Savage is. So I think that would be a good matchup. I was in a group chat with people. They were like, Lil Uzi Vert clears. Like, it's easily Lil Uzi. I was like, I don't know if it's easily Uzi. It could be Uzi, but I think 21 would surprise niggas because, again, you got the 11 songs I said, and then you bring in Sneaking with Drake, Jimmy Cooks with Drake, Mr. Right Now with Drake, Knife Talk with Drake, and then everything on Her Loss. Like, if we're in a live setting playing these shits is ringing off. And, like, Uzi and him are also stylistically different. So I think that could play to either Uzi's advantage or it could play to 21's advantage. So I think it'll be a really interesting battle. What do you feel about him in comparison to his class?
I think the confidence is warranted, right? For him to do what he did, I think is definitely warranted. And I think it also depends. Like, the great thing about these versus conversations is it is subjective, right? If I'm the judge, I may judge it differently from you, right? I'm going to personally, I have to dock points when all of your hits, you're the featured artist.
Yeah.
Now, granted, some people may not care. Some people may not see it as a place to, like, deduct points, I guess. But for me, if you're always the feature, now granted, he does show up on those features. I'm not going to take away from that man. He shows up. But I think it's different when you can kind of stand alone in that space. And honestly, I wasn't even really going to argue for Uzi as much. I'm more of a Kodak kind of guy if I had to pick a horse in that race. But I also want to remind people that Anderson .Paak dropped a collab album with Bruno Mars. And that is also a person that was in that freshman class. I think that class is awesome, by the way. I didn't realize how stacked it was. It feels like such a long time ago. Like, holy shit, I'm getting old. But yeah, so I would probably lean towards Kodak because I feel like Kodak can stand alone a little bit more as him being the, primary artist, and also his influence. I feel like he has a bigger tree, in that sense. But in a versus setting, I'm not mad at 21. I've never been, like, the biggest fan of his music. I'm not gonna sit here and cat for y'all. But I understand. Like, I started to get it. His voice, the monotone, all that stuff. It didn't really grasp me. But he's able to flourish with all of those people that you said,
Yeah.
which is a skill in itself, right? To be able to dominate with J. Cole, Drake, Future, Post Malone, like that is an accomplishment in itself. So, shout out to him.
And that's the thing too, is I went for like the biggest records, but we've seen artists in these verses like Mario versus Omarion, for example. Mario was playing B-sides and was winning off of his vocal ability as well. So we don't really know how 21 or any of them would curate it. Like I think I'm not the biggest Kodak fan. I respect his talent, but I think like he would come in and he would surprise me just because I'm probably not as familiar with his catalog. But I feel like he'll be playing shit that his fan base would really react to. So that's the other thing, is like curation is the big thing. Nick and I would say that all the time. Like how you curate it is something. But I was just thinking like, because people were dead saying like 21, what have you done? Like you haven't done shit. And I'm just like, have y'all been under a rock? Like 21's had a big record, multiple big records every year. Like. So
I think that's the testament to today's climate in music, though, because the verses that we've watched, we get to see like more legacy acts, right?
Yeah,
those legacy acts, their hits were universal. Everybody knew those hits. Today's artists, your fan base may not translate into the next man's fan base.
That's facts.
So like you said, Kodak might get up there and play like hood classics. His fans know every single song, and 21's may not. It doesn't diminish what he did, but it just doesn't translate within like on a even playing field. I guess I could say, right? Like Nelly versus Ludacris. No matter who you had in that race, you knew their catalog. You knew what was coming when it was coming. You knew how you would respond when it happened. Compared to the new generation, we don't have that. We're in like our own bubble, so to speak. So if I'm a Kodak fan, I may not even know a single song from somebody on that other cover.
And that's the other thing. Like when Verzuz first started, and everyone was like, "Oh, we need this artist who's been around for 2 years versus this artist." I was like, "No, like we should it should really only be people with like catalogs. Like Rick Ross versus 2 Chainz, that makes sense. They've been in the game over 10 years, both of them. Fucking Lil Jon versus T-Pain makes sense. Been in the game over 20 years, both of them. Like legacy acts. It really should be a legacy act thing. So these conversations for newer artists get nasty. 'Cause I'm just like, they haven't really had enough time. Like something might be big in 2018 that you might not necessarily care about later on. Like we've been able to sit with Rick Ross's, Blowing Money Fast and 2 Chainz, No Lie, all that for like a long period of time, and they've given more of that over the course of their career. So I just generally think if you ain't been in music for more than 10 years, you shouldn't even be talking about verses. But I do like 21's confidence. I do think that people should really remind themselves everything that he's contributed ever since really breaking through in 2016. Some things that 21 said that also riled people up. He was in a Twitter Spaces. Somehow Nas came up and Nas's relevance. And 21 said that I don't think Nas is really relevant. He just he makes good music and he just has like a very strong fan base. This also caused a lot of commotion on social media, also leading to people saying, 21, what the hell have you done? My perspective on the situation is his word choice was wrong. You shouldn't have used the word relevant when it comes to Nas. Also, a lot of people don't know what the word relevant means clearly, because just the takes that I was seeing, the defenses and all that, it was very stupid. Nas, because he is arguably a hip-hop GOAT to a lot of people, he will always be relevant within the scope of hip-hop. Is he a hot act today? Is he going to be the top of your rap caviar playlist? Is he going to be, like on when his music drops, is it the first album you run to? No. But he also doesn't need to be that. He's given over 20 years to rap music. He's got a bona fide classic in Illmatic, multiple classics to some people. So his relevance, it doesn't really matter because like he's a legacy act and shit. He's sounding better than he's sounded in quite some time with these Hit Boy projects. So, I understand what 21 was trying to say because he is a newer act and he's a part of this new era, this streaming era, this microwave era, this being present era. And I think he speaks to a younger fan base who generally may not care about Nas, which is fine. Like, that's the beauty of hip hop is it's been around for over 50 years. Certain age groups can enjoy what they enjoy. The younger people can enjoy what they enjoy. But like what matters to an old person may not matter to the kids. And what matters to the kids may not matter to the old person. But like Nas is just like, undeniably, objectively important to hip hop. Like that just goes without saying. So I think 21 could have used a better word instead of relevance. I understood what he was saying. I don't think he meant it to be disrespectful, but this is the era we're in. People want to get mad at something, so they hear Nas isn't relevant, and people are gonna act like you've never done anything before. So that was kind of annoying to see. It was just like a lot of bad faith arguments and a lot of like nonsense. But I mean, 21 kind of brought on himself. So not that I'm expecting him to be the most like like did the exact word to use. And I don't think he's thinking about not offending people. Like, he was just speaking his mind. But that's what comes with speaking your mind is.
I think when you speak on people who have accomplished as much as Nas has and has done as much for the culture as Nas has, I think, and especially as an artist, right, where words are your currency, I think you should be a little bit more careful with how you present and package certain things that you're trying to convey.
Yeah.
When I walked into the studio today, I pressed the doorbell. It was called The Ring, right? Nas is a heavy investor in that company. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's in front of millions of Americans' homes. Now, granted, his name isn't on it, his face isn't plastered on it, but I think the definition of relevancy, and in that word in particular, it just shows how closed-minded our culture can be sometimes.
Yes.
Because that word, sure, he's not hot. And like, I'm glad you said that word, because I think that's what he was trying to say. Maybe. I don't want to speak for him, but sure, he's not, you know, top 5 artists streaming. And again, it's also easy for 21 to talk like this when he has a #1 album alongside the hottest person in the world, right? So his perspective could be a little bit skewed. But yeah, man, I hate how we have to, you know, define or say these things to kind of uplift ourselves and diminish others. And maybe he didn't mean any disrespect by it, but if you use words for a living, you should know how to use them. You get what I'm saying? Especially when speaking about Nas. Like, that's somebody he should aspire to draw his career after, in a sense. And maybe not the direct path, but Nas is not only a rapper, an artist, he's still performing at a high level in his craft, and he's also made a way. You know, like, Nas came out in 94. I was born in 94. Like, I don't think people really take that into consideration. And maybe, again, 21, like I said earlier about 21 and Kodak, like, maybe he's in his own world. And that's what social media has allowed us to do, where we only stick in our own world. Like, there's somebody right now who is crying and celebrating the fact that Nas released an album. You get what I'm saying? And that person looks at Nas, and the relevance in his life that Nas has is unmatched. So it's tough.
And that's the other thing is, like, the regionalism comes into it, because people that matter more to New Yorkers, to Southerners, may not matter as much. Like, you know, Southerners look at Scarface and fucking Outkast and all these people as their goats. New Yorkers, we look, I'm not New York, Jersey people, but East Coast people look at Biggie, Hove, Nas, you know, those people as their goats. So I think that's also what played into it too, because a lot of New Yorkers were getting offended at what 21 said, and then a lot of Southerners were, you know, agreeing with him, like, Nas don't really matter that much to us. And it's like, yeah, like, that makes sense, but just because it's not relevant to you doesn't mean it objectively doesn't matter. The same way, like, me as a nigga from Jersey, I'm not gonna say Outkast wasn't that big, because first of all, I saw Outkast all over 106 and Park and like BET and all that, so like, I would never deny how big they are. But just because they don't matter as much to me, like, objectively, Outkast is one of the greatest duos of all time. So I think that's also the other thing, is people valuing their bubble and using that to project these grandiose statements about the music landscape as a whole, which is just not the case. So yeah, that's that on 21. He'll probably have another wild statement soon as the mayor of Clubhouse. But speaking of Nas.